Hi, this is James, and this is my rough draft of my first reading of D.E. Harding's The Hierarchy of Heaven and Earth, with an introduction by C.S. Lewis. And I'm obviously giving a nod here to Paul Vanderklay, who introduced this book a few days ago on his YouTube channel. And I'm going to link to it here because he reads from a really excellent preface done by C.S. Lewis, which really kind of lays bare the meaning crisis very beautifully. And this book was written in 1952. It was written essentially in the 30s and 40s, and again published in 1952 with an excellent introduction by C.S. Lewis. And C.S. Lewis says on the back, quote, "a work of the highest genius." And it's interesting. It's one of those books that I haven't heard before. And when I listened to the Paul's reading of the introduction, I was intrigued, and so I purchased the book. And I'm going to read from the last kind of section entitled "The New Angelology," and it probably would help to, maybe it wouldn't actually, to to go ahead and check out Paul's video first of the introduction. That kind of sets the sets the context. And there's one other video that I saw on YouTube about the hierarchy of heaven and earth. It was done by a British kind of professor who was giving a course or giving a talk on it. And I just would warn you, it is very counterintuitive at first. It takes some time to get into the logic. And even once you're in there, it takes more time to kind of really connect the dots. I see it as this book and this point of view as a sort of radical phenomenology rooted in science, and science not just in the kind of scientism that we are experienced today, a more broader kind of view of things. And the ideas in the book are, a lot of them are really insightful, and they are original. But again, it takes some time to get into the logic here. It's similar in some way to Mathieu Peugeot's language of creation, where it takes some time to get into what's really being communicated there. But I read from a couple of chapters, and the last 3 chapters in part 6 of the book are entitled here, the new Angelology, the Angel's Descent, the Angels of Darkness, and I believe there's one epilogue there as well. I'm going to be reading from the first section in part 6 of the book, entitled "The New Angelology." And I'm going to link to Paul's video, and I'm going to link to the video that it's about an hour or so, and it gives a breakdown of the concepts in the book. Now, when I first watched that video, I was like, "What am I watching?" It was really, it talks a lot about the concepts of the book of being headless. And the thing that interests me the most is its treatment of hierarchy and the fractal level of reality at all levels. It really does a great job of connecting the dots and giving you a new, interesting way to kind of inhabit the idea that we are both individuals in a human region, and he calls it regions, but we are also, our cells and our molecules or atoms, and then that scales all the way up from individual to collective to a nation to the earth. It goes all the way to the sun, to the galaxy, right? So you are both an individual, a human, with perception that mostly situates yourself here in the human region, but you're also the earth as it really in a real way. You are the earth. You are the sun, the star, the sun, and you're up. It scales all the way up and down, and it gives you a kind of interesting way to inhabit this idea. And what he does in this chapter, part 6 and chapter 12, the New Angelology, he looks at angelology from kind of 3 points of views: from the approach from tradition, the approach from present intuition, and the approach from a theoretical approach. And kind of a recap, he is talking about how we have cut ourselves off from the broader context of reality. The universe is now a dead, mechanistic, space that we're living in, and this has happened through through a contraction of an understanding of who we are, which is, he talks about it through the ideas of the good, the true, and the beautiful, right? So at the grandest level, the beautiful, the beatific vision, think Dante's comedy, we are the whole, right? Up and down the different aspects of hey, bud.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Good. I'm going to finish up and then we'll go, okay?
Okay.
All right, yeah, so the three kind of levels of being he talks about are the beautiful, which encompasses the cosmos, the living cosmos, which has been attenuated to the good, which was kind of the humanistic level, and then the true, which is kind of the scientific level. So the three kind of priests in these levels, or the three artists are at the beauty level, it's the theologians. At the good level, it's the artist, and at the true level, it's the scientist. But anyways, it's not going to make some sense until we kind of get into the approach here. So we went from the beatific vision to the goodness of the medieval humanist time to the truth-seeking in terms of purely materialistic sense to the Renaissance and kind of thereafter. And the idea is that we need to turn our gaze back from the true through to the good and to the beautiful again, to re-encompass and to leverage the science and the progress that's made and an understanding of this world in this way towards the larger regions of our reality that we have kind of become lost to. All right, so the New Angelology, the approach from tradition. Upon what may be called the angelology of this book, 4 different lines of thought, 4 approaches converge: the approach from tradition, the approach from present intuition, the theoretical approach, and the practical approach. Though universal tradition favors a hierarchy of beings more or less similar to those which the previous chapters have described, certain qualifications must be made. First, belief in the hierarchy, and particularly in the suprahuman part of it, has often been rejected by individuals and groups, and at times driven underground. Second, pre-scientific hierarchies take many forms, some of which are very fantastic. Third, there is much diversity of belief as to how far the remoter levels of the hierarchy are accessible to man. As a rule, however, he is not altogether shut out from these non-human realms, and their influence upon his earthly life and destiny is apt to be reckoned overwhelming. As to the work and place of the various orders, there is a notable measure of agreement. We find physical height matching real status, so that the hierarchy is eventually strung out along a radius reaching from the earth to the remotest encircling heavens. Cosmic space is regionally organized and non-uniform, and the long range is likely to be divine. And from their stations in the sky, the suprahuman orders guide our present life and all earthly events, and they are seen as our homes or our companions or even ourselves in afterlife. They take on lofty moral attributes and mark out the stages of the mystic's upward journey. There's a tendency to treat cosmological status and degree of mystical illumination as exterior and interior aspects of the same state. It is their enjoyment of the beatific vision which holds Dante's celestial bodies to their circular courses, and indeed his revolving saints and angels and stars are not inextricably bound up together for nothing, or in the interest of merely poetic necessity. Yet distinctions of level are here sharpened rather than smoothed over, and it is not man as mere man who mounts heavenwards. Jacob's ladder has double work to do. It is the pillar which holds apart the floors of the universe as well as the staircase which joins them. Counterbalancing these luminous and beneficent orders is the nether realm of dark and often subterranean powers, or else subcutaneous and physiological ones, erratic, stupid, malignant, or definitely evil. But here we find a significant contradiction. The higher beings are in certain instances bad and the lower good. In the language of chapter 13, regions may be reversed. And it is not only, or even chiefly, in the religion of primitive men that we find well-developed hierarchies, but rather in the great civilizations and cults of antiquity, and in the higher religions that have lasted to the present day. These not only put man at the center of a system of regions, at once physical and moral, but spread him through them all. In this life, and even more in the life to come, the good and the evil, the high and the low in him, find their own hierarchical levels. And at its completest, this concentric scheme, this myth pattern, or mandala, as some would say, has for radii the four arms of man's universal history, as he comes down from heaven and arises from the dust and then returns to both. Here indeed is a proper man, a man of depth and stature, vertical man. And here indeed is a cosmos. Instead of our verminous hierarchy of great and little fleas ad infinitum, a noble succession, a majestic and godly order. And the contrast between such a universe and our modern cosmic funeral parlor, or soap bubble, expanding in accordance with the equation, he has an equation here, cannot be exaggerated. Part 2, the approach from present intuition. Our knack of quietly dropping a belief while repeating its phrases with a show of sincerity and indeed fervor that deceives even ourselves is wonderfully used upon our angels. I love that sentence. Our knack of quietly dropping a belief while repeating its phrases with a show of sincerity and indeed fervor that deceives even ourselves is wonderfully used upon our angels. Jesus and the apostles are in no doubt concerning the hierarchy and its power and its place. We know better, but if we call ourselves Christian, crude denials are out of the question. It is so much easier to preserve the shrunken and fossilized heavenly hosts, along with other decorative relics like the Star of Bethlehem, in the tiny self-contained museum world of Christmas carols and greeting cards and stained glass windows, like celestial bees in amber. Their stings are drawn. Dead angels are harmless and pretty. We can always solemnly play the game of make-believe with them. Yet they are not permanently embalmed, but only shamming dead. In fact, the hierarchy is perennial. Names in physical aspect and relative stations, these may change again and again, but the thing remains. The divinities, which are the superior hierarchical series of one people, may become the demons or inferior series of their successors. Star gods in our own tradition have become angels. Angels have become disembodied, star-moving intelligences, and these have become natural tendencies and forces. In a machine-driven universe, angels are an unemployed aristocracy soon liquidated, for every great scientific advance puts more of them out of work, or rather compels them to wear the workmanlike disguise of laws of nature. Nor are they finally got rid of, now that science finds even compulsive laws and forces almost as mythological as their winged precursors. The wise have committed judicial murder upon the universe, but the simple and unlearned quietly revive the body, using the most unorthodox of medicines. They are not for long taken in by the apathetic fallacy or content to reduce the divine dance to a Saint Vitus's dance to cosmic clockwork. Indeed, the more colorless the scientific model of the universe, the more outrageously ornate the unscientific, for man will not be cheated of his angels. Of course, it is easy to show that in detail most popular mythology, to be found in astrology, theosophy, spiritualism, and scores of cults in the old world and the new, is childish. But what remains, what is indestructible and held in trust for mankind, is the general insistence upon a sacramental universe, the intuition of illustrious beings, of a magnificence and royalty we seldom dream of a vertical or tiered world which cannot be less wildly glorious than our wildest imaginings. Only the poets and occasional prophets that are half poets are close enough to the people to speak for them, and to tell us that in our bones we love and fear the hierarchies, that we are of the angels, party without knowing it, and have not lost so much as overlooked them. Part 3, the theoretical approach. Stars are first the players in the heavenly game, then footballs kicked around by indefatigable teams of angels, then mere footballs. Consider the main stages of our estimation of the sun. First, he is a living being like ourselves, only brighter and more divine. Then gradually his animating genius is distinguished and separated from his body, which becomes more incessant matter controlled from outside. Corpse and wraith begin to decompose for lack of each other. There is no more particular guidance, but only a carcass adrift in the sky and at the mercy of every current. And the next step after so thoroughly killing the sun is to get rid of the body. This is done by dismembering it. We take its sensible qualities one by one and remove them from the object over there to the perceiving subject here, till even its apparent motion becomes our own. All is transferred from heaven's eye to the beholders. To complete the work, we dissolve the sun's bare matter in the acid bath of modern physics. And so we have, in a deed spread over many centuries, killed our sun by inches and disposed of the body. However, the murder story has a sequel. The victim turns up in the least likely place, in us. In taking his life, we have taken on his life. And even this is not all. The tail piece is the discovery that I, that now claims the motion, the warmth and brightness and color, the science of celestial navigation, the divinity, does not lie outside the thou from which all this has been removed. The entire transaction, the passage of one quality after another from the object pole to the subject pole, lay within the sun. It was only after all the sun's own way, by voluntary dying of arising in us to fuller self-consciousness and more abundant life. In such ways, all our gods are done to death. To rise again in us and our social heritage is at once the lethal instrument and the vital outcome of this multiple dying. As the origin of culture is to be found in its divinities, so its development is their slow destruction. We live by deicide. Our ascent is the gods' down going. We eat them till the universe is for us almost empty, and we are full to bursting. To this dangerous state we have now come. The time is ripe for the rehabilitation of the divine object. We have to see that we are possessed, and that what we thought was our human science is in fact the science of the angels, not all of them good ones, who have made their abode in us. First, we have the living hierarchical universe. Next, physical science slowly drops her iron curtain, leaving on one side the many-leveled graveyard of the gods, and on the other the many-leveled mind that is in man. Finally, psychological science lets down a second safety curtain, dividing the theater of the mind into many-leveled conscious and a many-leveled unconscious mind. Thus, we have exchanged our one psychophysical hierarchy for three: a mindless hierarchy in time and space, a bodiless hierarchy which, though it reflects the first hierarchy, is itself out of space, and a third hierarchy which is both bodiless and mindless in any ordinary sense, an individual and racial unconscious which reflects much of the first two hierarchies, but is itself out of space and in some manner out of time also. And in each of the three is a mere relic of the totality. The first is all matter and no consciousness. The second, all consciousness and no matter. The third, neither matter nor consciousness. They have now to be put together again. Each department of science has to be seen as the mind of its own subject matter. Art has to recover its cosmic function, to reassimilate beauty to cosmic status, so that once again we can hear in our loveliest music the voices of star angels and the ancient harmony of the spheres. and so that every true artist is once more reverenced as the vessel of divine inspiration. Finally, the structure of religious experience must be joined again to the structure of the universe, uniting heaven with the heavens, angelic choirs with sidereal systems, the moral order with the physical, till the starry halos of the saints become something more than sacred millinery, the ascension something more than the myth or a levitation fantasy, and the Jacob's ladder for the mystics something more than a fire escape in a Freudian dream. We have too many lopsided hierarchies on our hands, hierarchies of physical bodies, of mind, conscious and unconscious, of loyalties, of intellectual systems, of the mystical and religious life. To these, let us bring the rule of economy and see if one many-sided hierarchy will not do. Doubtless, Occam's is no safety razor, and even if we were careful not to cut our universe's throat with it, we are still in danger of ending it with a face of things altogether too tidy and clean-shaven. On the other hand, let us beware of mistaking our mental laziness and intellectual squalor for obeisance to the unsearchable mystery, the angelic mystery that shows itself only to those Jacobs who will not give into it, but wrestle till the morning. It is our tragedy to have parted the star-strewn vault above from the moral law within, yet there was no other way. The order of the conscious mind is the order of nature, but neither can be realized till nature is studied as if it were a stranger to mind. Again, the order of the unconscious is, in the last resort, the order of the conscious mind, but unless they are distinguished, all is obscure. Sidereal intellect flowers only under the cold radiance of mindless stars. Angelic art needs to be in love with a sternly objective physical datum. The moral law must withdraw from the night skies to become the more heavenly. Such is the natural history of the angels. Part 4, the theoretical approach, the science of angels. Medieval man robs the angels of their bodies. Renaissance man robs them of their functions. Modern man robs them of their existence. He gives the coup de grace. It has taken us millennium thus to disprove our angels, and we have done so with immense thoroughness. All that we have above our heads we have drawn into them. We have changed places with the universe. We who used to be its desert are now the oasis. It is not that we have grown out of our angels, but they have grown into us. Indeed, our refutation of them has been altogether too thorough. It has become something like their demonstration. For if this is a disproof of the life above us, then eating is the disproof of food, and learning the disproof of books. Our angels have migrated, not absconded. They have passed from transcendence to immanence, not passed away. If they have been reduced to an absurdity, then we are that absurdity. But the study of these greater organisms cannot remain much longer neglected. A new and surpassingly wonderful world is about to show itself. A world that is all the more fresh and thrilling for having been so long hidden. We are ready for the universe's April, for a revelation which will be to us all that the solar system and the Americas were to other generations. We are about to look upon the visible gods, the innumerable hosts we are still too clever to see, the hierarchies which are still hiding behind the protective coloring of their own obviousness. Indeed, the only real difficulty is that they do not sufficiently try our faith. It is because they are so entirely credible that we are incredulous. In violent contrast to so much of our science, they do not ask us to believe a single impossible thing before breakfast. Therefore, they are a superstition, a fallacy, nonsense, except in the eyes of poets and intellectual outcasts. To the seer lends his eyes, seeing is disbelieving. Yet it was only when we ceased to believe in angels that angelology advanced beyond Dionysian guesswork. The anatomy of the principalities and powers in the heavens, their physiology, girths, weights, complexions, pulses, body temperatures, age groups, expectations of life, taxonomy, and races, all are the concern of science that entrains us, entertains angels, unawares and on condition that they sham dead. Nor is the psychology of these shining giants neglected. Only it is so strictly behaviorist that we are not even tempted to credit them with consciousness. But the truth is that all our science, whatever its hierarchical level, is psychological science, and behaviorist or introspective according to how it is viewed. When we study the stars, our science is their behaviorist psychology. And when we study of the stars, our science is their introspective psychology. Thus, astronomy, which is the knowledge of the stars by the stars, is of two quite different kinds. The first is the way stars think, and the second is the way stars think they think. But at present, both kinds of thought are unnaturally parted from their thinker, and unaware that they are stellar and not human. Our work is now to distribute vertically and horizontally in space and in time this intelligence that is concentrated in us. We have to spread it vertically by restoring it to its own hierarchical levels in commerce with the human level, horizontally by attributing it equally to the subject pole here and the object pole there in accordance with the rule of elsewhereness. In space and time by acknowledging its double location at the central here now and the circumferential there then. Briefly, the problem of our angels is the problem of their projection. Without ever leaving us, they must fly to every corner of the space-time world. For the legion that possesses us is so great that nothing less than the universe will serve for its embodiment. But first we must see to what extent the Dying Transcendent has been secretly reincarnated as the immanent. According to an ancient teaching, the soul, on its downward way to earth through the heavenly spheres, derives from each its gifts. We are more grasping and claim all the goods that we find in our regional journey. Till arriving at the center, we are replete to the degree that the universe is depleted. As soon, however, as we realize our interesting but perilous condition and see that this void to which we have come is a womb big with the hierarchy of heaven and earth, then our delivery and the universe's repopulation are at hand. Let me give a particular instance. Only by distributing the unconscious throughout the hierarchy can we make sense of it. Surely this ghostly, runaway, and altogether mysterious mental system of many levels, in part individual, in part trans-individual or racial, this unconscious consciousness or unattached experience, which is somehow not experienced, is more fantastic and baffling than any antique myth. But to what embodied mind sufficiently in rapport with the conscious mind, sufficiently graded in quality and age and scope of purpose, can I attribute my unconscious processes? The answer is plain: to the hierarchy. Here are vehicles in abundance and fitted in every way to carry all my unconscious physical content. What they want, I have too much of. My ghosts fly to their corpses and the world comes to life again. All the nebulous angels and the demons of the analyst, his phantom world of ego and id and superego, of the unconscious and preconscious and conscious, of autonomous complexes, sensor, libido, and the rest, which now drift in midair, need to be tied down at every point to the merely physical series. To be studied, the two aspects had to be isolated. But the further their separate investigation is pushed, the more artificial they become. As for the program of this reunion, the main lines are already plain. The primitive, amoral, illogical id, the ego coping with the present human scene, and the superego, or severe higher authority from which religions derive, these are only the infrahuman and human and suprahuman hierarchical grades partially conceived and under other names. Even the Paris, the id and the superego working together to bypass the conscious ego, the pairs, even the pairs, the id and the superego working together to bypass the conscious ego, are recognized already. Already the fact is that, however, we try to describe the procedure of the hierarchy of heaven and man and earth, we find ourselves using most of the analyst's concepts, suitably disguised. Part 5, the practical approach. Many good things have flowed from belief in suprahuman beings. Indeed, our culture is itself the outcome of such a religious vision and impulse. It is true that divinities do not survive their gifts. Nevertheless, needing gods to destroy is still needing gods. And when the last remnant of sanctity has been gathered in from the universe to ourselves, the only thing to do is to send it all back again. Something like a new angelology is the condition of our Renaissance. In fact, the human itself cannot long outlast the suprahuman. Our real choice is not in the long run between divinities and no divinities, but between reasonable and beneficent ones and their opposites. If official science and religion and philosophy combine to take away our good angels, we are terribly apt to turn to bad angels. If we are denied a celestial hierarchy whose office is to join us in glorifying God, we try to make do with a terrestrial hierarchy whose office is to deify the leader or party or ism and physical force and the elemental powers and matter. What may be called the law of the conservation of mana ensures that when the gods die, their potency passes to baser gods, to man, and to the demons beneath them. In their flight from the 9 heavens to the depths of the human psyche, our angels have inevitably changed for the worse. There's a smell of brimstone and more than a glimpse of a cloven hoof. It is not the glory, but only the power which leaves the skies for man and man for matter. The body of our universe is centrifugal, and its mind centripetal. And now that their separation in the giant centrifuge of our civilization is nearly complete, the need for reversing the machine becomes daily more apparent. Our future greatness lies in the discovery of heaven's greatness. Our present happiness, insanity, and perhaps survival lie in the rediscovery of a hierarchy of life and meaning and bliss that are wholly outside ourselves. So, 2 more parts here, about a page and a half left. Part 6, the practical approach, religion today. The trouble with religion unmodified by science is that it is incredible. With religion modified by science, that it is not religion. No wonder the pious grow less intelligent and the intelligent less pious, so that both become fragments of men. Our many personal and social problems are at bottom cosmological. We suffer from a disease in our universe. All the rest is signs and symptoms. And the cure is a vision of the living hierarchy. Awaiting us is the momentous discovery that science, so far from having destroyed the essentials of the traditional religious view of the universe, has only confirmed them, supplying an immense quantity of empirical detail in place of fantasy. Not new facts, but a change of viewpoint, is all that is now needed to reveal to us in its magnificence the sacramental universe that satisfies head no less than heart. 2 things we can do without. On the one hand, a sacred plenum, a museum overflowing with dusty ecclesiastical relics, and on the other, a sacred vacuum, a house of God so emptied and swept and garnished that, if it is not presently occupied by the good suprahuman, will be requisitioned by a less desirable authority. The proper use of the scientific broom is to preserve and not destroy the furniture of religion. And indeed, the long retreat of faith before science's relentless advance has a very different look once religion claims science as its own agent and general, who hands back at least each territory, not depopulated, but purged of the forces of superstition. The friend of the essence must sometimes be the enemy of the accident. Science threatens religions, not religion. A faith that cannot stomach the universe does not deserve to survive, nor can it without a cosmos. It is almost impossible to go on believing in God without believing in angels, or in angels without believing in man. If we rediscovered hierarchical man in the hierarchical universe, we should be quite sure of its needs of a head. But our level-down universe has little use for one. Even the pious are now for the most part near atheists. Though they spare the king, they have executed all his ministries. In truth, our self-glorifying war against the court of heaven has been aimed at its sovereign, and our resubmission to it is part of our resubmission to him. Certainly, it was no high intellectual necessity which led to such an act of cosmic insurgence. Our strange conviction that the hierarchy stops short at man, or if it goes on, that between him and the absolute there is nothing, is much more due to a defect of imagination than excess of reason, to parochialism than enlightenment, to worship of the human parish pump, or rather of its countless rods and pistons, than of the divine oneness. Even when we still have some use for our angels, our belief in them is so unimaginatively man-centered that it is almost disbelief. How odd that the hierarchy above us should be all mind, that the hierarchy below us should be all body, and that we, where they overlap, should be both. It is perhaps a common superstition in the hierarchy that one's own order almost is body-mind, a delicious blend of spirit and matter sandwiched between great uninteresting slabs of mere spirit and mere matter. So that, for instance, angels have us for engines and archangels for ghosts. Really, it is time we suspected that our human viewpoint is not the only one. All right, last section, 7, the practical approach, art today. As science bleeds the universe of its science, and religion bleeds it of its religion, so art bleeds it of its art. All is transfused to man. Beauty leaves the hierarchical world for the non-hierarchical eye of its beholder. But one level of subjectivity is the death of art, and its rebirth is the revelation of the divinely masterful other, the tremendous many-leveled universe that compels the artist and is no longer a convenient horizontal row of pegs on which to hang his feelings, his sacred private experience. And so the artist and the priest find the universe that the scientist has found. It remains a Frankenstein's monster, an energetic body without a soul. No wonder our world is mad. 2/3 of it are missing. The business of art is now to join religion in what is, from one viewpoint, the recognition of objective values at non-human levels, and from another, the hierarchical dispersion of the subjective values that have been long accumulating in man. So thoroughly have we insulated the human from the cosmic that when at last they are brought together, the effect may well prove overwhelming, as the pent-up energy is discharged in a flash of illumination revealing undreamed-of beauty. We are ready for a great poet to celebrate the marriage of the visible heaven and the virgin earth, in an ecstasy proportional to their long separation and continence. So, summary. In this chapter, I've said 1, that men generally have believed in a living cosmic hierarchy. 2, that the same belief is widely held today by the common people and by poets who speak for them. 3, that science not only confirms and purifies this belief, but it is an important part of the intellectual procedure of the hierarchy itself. And 4, that for the sake of our health and happiness, of our art and our religion, and even if it may be of our survival as a species, a sincere belief in the hierarchy is indispensable. More concisely, belief in angels, call them what you will, is supported by tradition, present intuition, science, and practical considerations. Of how many of our most cherished convictions can we say half so much? But our works are our only eyes. We cannot see the angels as they are till we flood. We cannot see the angels as they are till we flood them with the light of our active love and admiration. We have the hierarchy which our behavior deserves and our charity implies, and we are required to pay the currency of action for all of our insights. The angels still perplex me, but that is because I am so rarely good enough for their company, and because my deeds will not let my thoughts run altogether out of sight. All right, that is the end. If you stick around for this long, I'm going to give you a little glimpse of a beautiful carving of a seraph. just to bring everything home here, right? All right. Thanks for listening, everyone.